Hey there, and welcome to What's the Story. We're an inquisitive bunch of hosts from the What's the Story team on a mission to uncover stories about faith and courage from everyday people. In doing that, we get the privilege of chatting with amazing guests and have the opportunity to delve into their faith journey, the hurdles they've overcome, and the life lessons they have learned along the way. If you enjoy our podcast, don't forget to subscribe and sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, whatsthestorypodcast.com. It's your direct line to the latest episodes and detailed show notes delivered straight into your inbox. And the best part, it's totally free. What's the Story is brought to you by Crowd Church, who fully understand that stepping into a traditional church might not be everyone's cup of joe. Crowd Church provides a digital sanctuary, a safe space to explore the Christian faith where you can engage in meaningful conversations rather than just simply spectating. So whether you're new to the Christian faith or in search of a new church family, visit crowd.church. And if you have any questions at all, just drop them an email, hello@crowd.church. They would love to connect with you. And now let's meet your host and our special guest for today.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. Today I am joined by a friend, Esther Stamp. Now, Esther is a Yorkshire girl who now lives in the Northwest, Preston to be precise, with her husband Darren and 3 children who arrived to her both through birth and also the adoption route. 2 of her children have additional needs, which is something I know about too. And so life can be pretty busy. She works part-time as an operations manager and is also very involved in her local church. She's passionate about walking alongside others who are struggling, really getting to know people well, and is a keen foodie as well. So if you go to her house, you'll often find her in the kitchen cooking and providing lots of hospitality. Her house is kind of an open house, always full of people walking in unannounced, and that's absolutely how she likes it, which sounds pretty cool. So, Esther, I'm going to bring you in there.
Hi,
I feel
Anna.
like I want to come around to your house.
You are welcome anytime.
I'll
Just
take you up
walk
on that
in.
offer. More the merrier.
Yeah, people just walk in, go for it. You're more than welcome to come.
Brilliant. I might just take you up on that sometime next time I fancy a trip across the Northwest to Preston.
Feel free. The kettle's always on in our house.
Love it. So, like any good northerner, always have the kettle on. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background then, Esther. Kind of, obviously you grew up in Yorkshire. Kind of tell us about your early life. Kind of, have you always been a Christian, or was that something that came a bit later? Tell us about how life looked growing up.
My family are from Halifax. I've got 3 brothers, so it's quite busy growing up in our house. I think there's only 5.5 years between the 4 of us, so it was pretty full on. And my parents were Christians, and my dad became a Christian in his mid-30s, so he had quite a dramatic conversion. Whereas my mum grew up in kind of a church-going household, but she didn't have anything majorly dramatic. So we were brought up with Christian parents and going to a very, very charismatic church growing up. And then when I left for uni, looking back, I definitely wasn't a Christian at that point, but I think that's quite often the case, isn't it? Coming from Christian households and then leaving. It can often be a bit of a tricky time getting to work out what you actually think and feel. I think in the first year of university, I definitely wasn't a Christian, or didn't live as a Christian at least. And then in my first kind of summer, the first summer after my first year, I was on holiday with my friend Sarah, who went to church with us and is a Christian from growing up. And I don't think there was kind of a dramatic turnaround, but we went on holiday the summer after my second year, and definitely there was a massive change from that first summer to the second summer. I know she was getting me to read the Bible when we were there in the first holiday, and we had lots and lots and lots of deep chats about whether I believed it, did I believe it, and what that meant. So it's quite a slow conversion really in that year, but definitely by the end of my second year I was a Christian.
it's kind of like you kind of grew up around faith,
Yeah.
but then there's a bit of, and you're right, it's so often the case that like I know for me, I grew up in a Christian family. I was a pastor's kid actually, and it's like that kind of going to uni, having to figure out faith for yourself, that it's actually like, is this just something that I've grown up with culturally, or is God actually real for me? And like, I think quite often, not always, but quite often we hear that, like, and people often share on this podcast as well that, it's often in kind of moving away and becoming your own person and kind of finding your own identity as an adult, that it's like, do I want to continue with this faith? Is it real to me or not? And there's that kind of period of deciding whether you're going to kind of go on with your faith or not. So it's
And
obviously
what they
cool
trust in, like, what do you trust in? What do they trust in? What is the gospel? I'm not sure even when I got there I would have been able to tell you masses of the gospel, but it had planted a seed of some kind. I know after my first year I said to Sarah, I've done everything that I want to do, and lived how I want to live, but something just isn't sitting right, and something's missing. So I think being brought up in a Christian home, often it gives you the kind of realization of it, there's something more, and then what you do about that later on, you find the reason quicker, probably, from coming from Christian households. You know where to turn, don't you, when you feel like that?
I think that's really right. And so obviously those were your uni years, which were quite formative, and then what happened then? You like met your husband. Did you meet at uni, or was that later in church? Or?
I stayed in Preston, so I went to uni there. And then he had found a teaching job. He'd become a Christian at uni in Exeter. Then he went to do his PGCE in Leeds and did a couple of years teaching there, and then moved to Preston because he had a few friends around here, and a lot of them had left Leeds, so he was kind of trying to work out what to do, and he knew the pastor of our church, so he thought, well, that's one place where I know people, so I'll look for a job there. There was a few different places, and he got a job in Preston, so we met at church.
Cool. Fab. And then kind of fast forwarding a few years, so you kind of get married, you meet in Preston through church, you eventually get married, and then you had your first child. But then, I mean, we touched on it in your bio at the start, but obviously there wasn't a straightforward pathway to motherhood, because you had birth children, but you also had adopted child. So can you tell us kind of how did that infertility journey sort of unfold?
Yeah, sure. So we got married. I think I was 21, 22. And then we thought it would be quite simple, as naive cells do. Always a bit naive about these things. And with our first child, it took, I think it's quite a year to conceive, but I don't know if you've been through the infertility journey, but they often at the GP say, oh, you'll be fine, try not to stress, all that kind of stuff. And so it did kind of, we were about to be referred and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't as straightforward as we thought. And we then we got pregnant, and then when I had her, it was a very dramatic birth. Got induced, and then everything went completely wrong. Emergency section, but very, very emergency. She wasn't breathing when they got her out. It was just very, very dramatic. And then I had to have some surgery. So when we had her, we were very aware of the fact that future children might not be on the horizon through birth of children. And that was a correct assumption. We when we came to think about having a second, we couldn't conceive, and then we went for checks and things, and it ended up being a bit of me and a bit of Darren. And so they said to us, there's very, very, very slim chance that you will have any more children, kind of naturally conceived children, which was a bit of a blow.
Kind of amazing that you'd had one, though, even though obviously it wasn't the easiest pathway, and it took quite a while to conceive. I think the kind of it was both of you problem. The me problem was compounded by having her, so it was already we're already on the back foot basically, and then obviously with that as well, it just meant that the chances were very, very slim. But Darren and I had a conversation before we got married. I've got quite a lot of friends that are adopted, and when you're having these deep and meaningful chats about whether you want to get married and the future and all that kind of stuff, I said to him, I just want to say that in the future at some point I do want to have a chat about adoption. So if it's a definite no, you need to tell me now so that I don't bring it up. And he said, no, I'm open to that chat. That's fine. So we'd kind of had a little chat about it. Yeah.
Which then meant that when all that happened, we quite quickly made the decision to not go further with lots of treatment. We had a few friends that were going through IVF. It just, we were kind of walking with some friends that were going through it, and I quickly thought, I don't think this is what I would want to do. And we'd had that chat. So that's how that adoption kind of journey started.
Yeah.
And then we adopted our second child when Poppy, our eldest, was 4. She'd just started school in September. And we adopted our little boy in the end of November, the start of December was all the bridging. And then, then we got him as a toddler. And it was total carnage from then on in. He's absolutely nuts. He's still completely nuts now. A total joy, but totally nuts. And so we went from having one pretty placid 4-year-old to a placid 4-year-old and a completely nutty 21-month-old who, very cute, but climbed everything, grabbed everything, ran away out of the door. You'd open the front door and he'd leg it down the road, that kind of thing. It was a bit of a shock to the system.
I mean, when you've got a placid girl and then you get a little boy after that anyway, even without them being kind of adopted and having all that extra kind of trauma that they can bring into life. Yeah. I think that can be quite contrast at the best of times. We add
it was a steep learning curve. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I had to be on it all the time. I still got to be on it a little bit, but the first few years were full on.
Quite full on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of a steep learning curve, and then you had a surprise third.
Then I had a surprise third, What more can you want when it's already total carnage?
One more in the measure.
Yeah.
So that was, obviously that wasn't an adoption then, it wasn't planned?
It was not an adoption, no. It was a birth child. It's a surprise. Brucey bonus, we call him. So we got we adopted our little boy in the December, and I found out I was pregnant the next October.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And then we had to do new house, new car, we had to go bigger for everything. So it was a lot of
everything. That's what happens in 3, hey?
Yeah, you can't fit 3 car seats in a car, can you? You can't. It was totally insane, but 8 years on, 7 years on, it's less insane.
Yeah.
But at the time it was.
And how old are the kiddos now then?
They are 12, 10, and then very nearly 7.
Yeah. So a bit of an easier phase than that kind of like earliest years, but yeah, still kind of busy.
I mean, there's a lot
Cool.
of bickering, but there's less death-defying stunts now. I can leave
Definitely
them
more
and they don't
predictable.
die. We've gone through COVID was our mad stage. Unfortunately, we had a toddler and 2 homeschoolers and
Yeah,
all that jazz.
that's a lot.
But now it's a bit calmer.
Cool. So talking of calm times and slightly more mad times then, so that's obviously one challenge that you faced in kind of through life, but actually you've also more recently come out of a pretty challenging couple of years as a whole family, haven't you?
Yes.
And I wonder if you can like tell us a little bit more about that, like just tell us what happened.
Yeah. Darren was a teacher at primary school, and it was also the same primary school that my children were at. So he was in one kind of part of the building, and then I was taking the others. And one day I was going to pick up the children and got intercepted by the head teacher, got taken into a room with Darren, and he said, "The police are in my office. Darren has been accused of sexual assault of one of his pupils in his class, and said the police want to speak to you, Esther." And so I had to follow him.
Wow.
And that was that. So I had to follow him to the office where there were 2 police officers who said, "So Darren has been accused of this offence, and until we get to the bottom of everything, this is what has to happen." And they said he's got to move out of the family home because in this scenario, you are not allowed to be unsupervised with children, and those children include your own children.
Wow.
And then, so I had to figure that out. And at this point, I didn't know where my children were, so I was sat there thinking, where are actually my children? Thankfully, they were just in a classroom, but I wasn't entirely certain of that fact at that point. And then, that started 2 years of total.
Turning your whole life upside down, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like I can't imagine how much of a shock that is. You're just kind of doing a normal family day, you know, ready to go and pick up your kids from the school run, and then suddenly this whole thing happens that completely turns your life upside down instantly. It's like your husband can't come home, he can't live in the family home anymore. He's being investigated for all these, like, for this allegation that's been made against him.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, what goes through your head at that moment, and kind of like what happened? Like what happened? I mean, did you sort of like you must have been like questioning yourself or like thinking, I mean, did you for a moment believe it that it was possibly true, or like like kind of where did that leave you? I can't even begin to imagine.
Well, at first, very naively, I just thought, oh, this will all sort itself out really quickly. That was definitely stage 1. I remember even on the evening, my lovely friend, I can't even remember ringing her, but apparently in that chaos, I rang her and just said, "This has just happened." She had the foresight to just walk into my house that evening. And even then, I remember just kind of thinking, it'll be fine. This is not going to last very long. This is, we just need to sort this out. You know, once I talk to him, it'll be fine. But very quickly, I think by the end of that first week, it happened on a Tuesday. And by the weekend, it kind of sunk in that this wasn't going to be a quick chat and off you trot kind of situation. And then I remember, I don't think I even slept 1 hour from that Tuesday to the Sunday. I remember, on that Sunday morning thinking, when am I going to sleep? But all through those nights, I went through in my mind every single memory that I could possibly think of and analysed it over and over again, thinking, have I missed something that's been right in front of my eyes? Have I has something been going on all this time and I've just not realised it? But I couldn't find anything in my memory.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't think of anything that was untoward. I couldn't think of anything that was even slightly off.
Yeah.
You do go through it in your mind, like thinking, am I totally blind to something all this time?
And you'd also, it's not only that, is it, that your own experience, because you do hear of these cases where spouses just don't see that side of, their partner. But like, also you'd been through the adoption process by this point, which meant you had social workers turning upside down all of your lives and scrutinizing you quite closely for a safeguarding point of view, as well as him being a qualified primary school teacher. So for all of those things, there's quite a lot of safeguarding sort of checks on a person as well, isn't there? So
yeah, with the adoption process as well, you think if anything was a little bit off, they would have found it. I guess there are teachers all over the place that have kind of secret lives and whatever, but with the adoption process, it's pretty impossible to have anything dodgy. It would just come up. If your friend, even if they ask your friends, they find reference, like they do all sorts of stuff. I think we worked out I had 20 hours of interview time with the social worker, and they ask you some serious questions that make you self-analyze and analyze your family and everything. And I did remember thinking, we got through that and nothing came up in my mind at that point even that was remotely negative. But you do, I think, well, I say you have to, not everyone has to, but that is how it went with me. I spent a lot of time going over things.
You self-reflected, and obviously you also kind of got lots of feedback of friends and family and other people who were like, this just doesn't resonate and seem true to us.
Yeah.
And so you kind of find that point of peace somehow, like this, I don't believe this is true, this allegation's been made falsely.
Yeah.
But I mean, even so, it's still a lot to deal with initially, isn't it? Well, all the way through. Because, I mean, it must have been a lot to navigate, especially you've still got 3, at that point, quite small children.
Yeah.
In your house. You've got all this scrutiny on your family because of these allegations. Your kids go to the same school where it's all happening, and you've still got to turn up there every day.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you deal with all of that?
Well, looking back, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I'd love to have some wisdom, but I'm not entirely sure how that happened. The first week was full on, really full on, because it triggers everything then, and obviously no one does. As soon as it triggers something, it's it goes off on one. So it happened on the Tuesday. By Thursday, we had social workers in our house assessing us all, checking that that Darren we were not ignoring the guidance. By Sunday, we knew that he wasn't allowed to go to church anymore because there's children there and the risk of being unsupervised with a child. So that had kicked in. One of my really best friends, she works for the police, and they had said to her, you can't be involved with this family anymore. Wow. So by a week in, it felt like pretty much everything had been stripped away from me, apart from the kids and the house. That's what I had left, really. So it was a really grueling process. And then if you add into that 3 children whose dad has just one day been taken away from them, they were shell-shocked for quite a while. And the nights, I remember the nights has been horrific. The boys just had nightmares every night, I think. I just had a child in my bed at some point during the night, a lot of the time, both of them, to be me, both boys. So we just felt battered, I think, the first few weeks. And then, then you add to that, you have to go through the school playground. That was horrendous. I think that might be the worst bit, actually, having to walk through people chatting, gossiping, children, adults, everything. And it's all about you. And you've just got to walk through it with your kids. who are not deaf and therefore can hear everything that's been said as well as you can hear. And I remember just really trying to chat to them to distract them from what was going on around them. And we just got back off May half term, which meant I think it was 6 weeks until the end of term in July. And all through that time, it was constant chat, constant gossip. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how we got through it, but we did. But I think one massive thing that I can remember was our church family just stepping on in there and getting on in our lives and not even asking us, just going for it. So even now, we are, maybe 6 weeks after the verdict, I'm sat in my kitchen and I've got about 4 or 5 sets of flowers. My freezer is full of meals that other people have made, I have not made. I've got boxes of brownies in my freezer that people just kept making us. We kept laughing because I think we had about 30 brownies to eat at one point. They're all in there, they just saw a need and just fulfilled every single need, particularly in that first 6 weeks. So I think actually how we got through it, obviously the obvious answers are praying, Jesus, but mostly it was my church family who were brilliant all the way through, but particularly in those first few weeks.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think church community and can really rally around you and really become like extended family when it's at its best. And I love that was your experience, because often I think when life is really hard, that's one of the ways we experience God with us the most, through other people that he puts around us often.
Definitely.
And
they just did a bit more, I was saying this to someone the other day, how people say, oh, let us know if you need anything. Actually, that puts the onus on the person that's suffering to say, this is what I need. Whereas they were great at going, I've just put some dinner in your freezer. If you want it another day, that's fine. But it's in there if you want it. And a few people just would say, oh, you've got this on, you've got that on. Let me take them. I'll take them. And a lovely lady from church who we didn't know very well before, she said to me, it was maybe 3 or 4 months in, she didn't know straight away. It's not exactly something you spread around to your church families. But when she did find out, she came and said, Esther, practically, what is the hardest part of your week? And I said to her, I've got one day where I've got to take all of them to the swimming lesson, come back, feed them, take them all to a piano lesson. When it's one of their bedtimes, it's a nightmare. And she just said, great, I'll see you on Thursday. I'll do it all. I'll take them to the swimming lesson by themselves. I'll come back, drop them off, stay for a cup of tea, and then I'll take, it was Poppy, our eldest, Poppy to a piano for you. Every Thursday, that's fine. I'll do it for you.
That's brilliant.
And that's what she did.
Isn't that just a great example of how you get alongside someone who's going through a tough time?
Yeah.
Just like ask what the practical need is and just fill it.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So obviously you had a great community around you, but I'm interested to hear kind of like, how was your experience of like your own faith in the middle of it? Obviously you were like crying out to God because you like mentioned like you kind of got through it with support from other people and also lots of prayer.
Yeah.
But like kind of, how was it in the middle of everything? Did you feel close to God? Did you sense that he was there with you through it all, or was it actually really tough? Or both?
I wish I could tell you that I was close to God and sensed him close to me, but that would be a lie, so I might as well be real with you all.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was bleak. I didn't feel anything for the whole time. So obviously I can tell you how many years it was now because we're on the other side.
Yeah.
It was almost 2 years from that day when I got intercepted to the end of the trial, and not one day, not one night did I feel God's presence close to me. I wish I could say otherwise, but I didn't. But we are in a church that really tries to teach the Bible really well. And I am so grateful that they did, because I think when you don't feel any presence, you don't feel like any closeness, you've got to cling on to what you know is true. And I'm just really, really grateful to our church leadership who each Sunday before all this, but carry on preaching from the Bible. And I think there was one part where we went through Job, and I remember thinking, okay, well, if Job has all this horrendousness and he clearly isn't feeling God very close to him, what did he do? And I just thought, right, well, he just cries out to God, and he just tells him, he basically says, what on earth is going on here, doesn't he, to God. And I thought, well, I think that's all I can do at this point. So that's what I did. But I don't have a nice fairy tale to tell you.
No, and that's so often how life is. And I kind of love what you say there, Esther, about it not always being about feeling God close to you. But so often, like, faith isn't about feelings, it's about choosing to believe, even when you can't see any reason to. And I love the fact that you had to choose theology over emotions. Like, you know, got to choose, like, to believe that God is good, even when your life doesn't look good right now. And to choose to believe God's there, even when he doesn't feel particularly close in that circumstance and situation. And just sometimes that kind of clinging on for dear life to God is
the only thing you can do
so
sometimes.
powerful. It can be quite formative, can't it? But not at all easy to do. So I really respect that.
And I think I remember saying to Darren a few weeks in, a few Sundays ago, I was stood there singing about God being God. We're now 3 or 4 Sundays on, and bear in mind, Darren wasn't even allowed to come with me, so I had to go to church all this time, just me and the kids. And I remember saying to him, I don't think any circumstance should make me think differently. You know, if this is who God is, it's who he is 3 weeks ago, and it's still who he is. And we just have to, I remember saying to him, just got to remember that, because it's really easy right now to think, what is going on here, right? I've had enough. And it was, I know a really low point that I had was, it was a real surprise when Darren got charged. So he got charged in the March, it happened in the June, we had to wait all that time.
Wow.
But it felt like, and it did happen, every time I really prayed so hard, something worse would happen. And the night before he got charged, I was literally on my knees, praying, crying, just like, come on, this has got to change. And the next day he got charged. And I was like, what is going on? What is this? I remember being in the car driving and going, what is this? Just out loud, like, what is going on? And so I text around some of my friends, and I just said, I'm not going to pray about the practicalities of this trial and everything anymore. I'm going to pray for my children. I'm going to pray for Darren, but I'm not going to pray about timings, logistics, anything. Please, can you do that for me? And they said, sure, we will pray for that for you. And lots of them said, and we'll pray for you, you all as well, but we'll pray about the logistics. I said, I can't do it anymore, but I do still believe God is good. I still believe that he's with me, but I can't do that side of praying anymore. It's just too hard. And they all just said, that's fine, we'll do it for you.
I love that. It kind of reminds me of, I think it's in Exodus when Moses is like fighting battle, and when he raises his hands, like they're winning.
Yeah.
The Israelites are winning, and then every time his hands get weary and like fall, they start losing. So he has to keep his like hands raised in prayer, as it were.
Yeah.
And when he gets too tired, like two of his other kind of leaders, so like I think it's Aaron and her. Is that right?
Sure. I know it's Aaron. I'm not sure about the other
one. Anyway, so like he gets, basically the point is get your friends to hold up your arms in prayer when you're too weary and too battle weary. And I definitely know that I've been in scenarios in life where I'm like, I believe God is good and that he will come through in the end, however that looks. But I don't have the energy to keep praying for a certain outcome that I don't know if it's going to happen or not. And I'm just emotionally exhausted. And I think it's okay to be like I felt like that when we were like, me and Andy were going through recurrent miscarriages, and it's a totally different scenario, but it's that thing
same
of
feeling.
It drives on and on and on, and you keep asking for a certain outcome. And when it doesn't come quickly, it can become very exhausting. And I think that's, again, it's another area where being a community with other believers is so key, isn't it? Because people can hold you up in prayer when
definitely.
You're like, I'm tired.
And it's difficult. It's difficult sometimes, isn't it, being a Christian, because what we want to say to people is, it'll be all right in the end. But actually, the Bible doesn't say that, does it? And so it's really hard, because what you want to say, what you desperately want to say is, I know it'll be fine in the end. But that isn't what it says. And when you know that, you're thinking,
Yeah, and you kind of like, we have this very Western style of Christianity, don't we? Which is kind of quite comfortable. And you know, it's like, oh, God will make our lives nice. And like, when you actually read the Bible, you know, people were killed for their faith and, you know, had really difficult lives in the Bible, and they were the heroes of the faith. And they still had really difficult lives in a lot of ways.
And a lot of their endings were not pleasant, were they? You know, you think like John the Baptist and people, you think their ends were not fairy tale endings and happy endings. They, you know, all the way through from start to finish was pretty grim for a lot of people in the Bible.
And actually, the only real guarantee we get is like the eternal one, isn't it? It's like, it will be all right in the end, but that's in eternity. It's not necessarily in this lifetime, which is only part of the picture. And I think that's the thing we can often forget. We're so can be so short-sighted. But then equally, like 2 years of your life going through this every day, it's not a short amount of time either, is it? No. It's really hard when you're living it day in and day out. So yeah, it's a real struggle. But obviously, you know, you did get through it. It wasn't easy, but you know, as you've said, you did get through it, and God did come through for your family in the end. So the trial was concluded about 6 or 8 weeks ago when we were recording, and it came out in your husband's favour. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Because actually the jury came back really quickly, didn't they?
Quickly, yeah. It was, I think, 3 days. Yeah, 3 days. The prosecution start off with their evidence, and then it switches to the defence, and we had to kind of sit while Darren gave his evidence, which was just like nothing. I can't even describe it, I don't think. The atmosphere was just as if we weren't breathing. I was convinced that I didn't actually take a breath in the courtroom, but obviously I did. It felt like I hadn't. And that was his first chance to tell the truth and to defend himself after all that time. And then one of his colleagues was one of his witnesses, and he did really well as well, just saying, you know, this isn't true, this is not the man we know, this is impossible, you know, that kind of thing. And then they do their closing speeches. We found the prosecution closing speech really difficult because it's their job, but she was painting him out to be something that he's not. And her cross-examination was quite tricky as well. And then came our closing speech. The the defence closing speech, which was really good. Just went through who Darren was as a person, and kept on going through and just saying, why would this man do this? He just wouldn't do this because it's not who he is. It's not where he was. It would be impossible in the scenario that they painted. And then the jury was sent out. I think it's about 3:20, something like that. And we got told at 4:00 we send them home. So don't expect any decision because it takes 12 people. We've got to make a coffee each and all the practicalities. Yeah, they've got to, by the time they've made 12 coffees and they've got to appoint a foreman, that's pretty much your 40 minutes done. And so that was on the Thursday, and they said, don't expect anything today. But you have to go back into the courtroom for them to send the jury home. So 4:00 came, we went into the courtroom and they said, okay, we're going to send the jury home. However, we have got there were 3 charges, and said, we've got 2 out of 3 verdicts if you want them. We sat there like, what? Okay. So they said, not guilty, we've not decided, and not guilty on the Thursday. And so the judge said, okay, well, that's 2 out of 3. We'll see you tomorrow. And he said, come back at 11 because I've got some cases on and all this jazz. So we knew that 2 out of 3 not guilties on the Thursday night. And then on the Friday, we went back at 11, and then they bring them all in and they have, do all this. There's a lot of palaver, let's go with, in a courtroom, which I didn't realise until that week.
Yeah.
Then they sent them out to decide, and the judge said, whatever happens, I am in a case until 12:15. I'll see you then, and we'll see where we're up to. Which we were a bit more relaxed on the Friday compared to the Thursday. I think we got 2 not guilties, but also we knew that we weren't waiting for an announcement. We knew we were waiting till 12:15. Yeah. And then 12:15 came, and we were wandering in, and the barrister said to us, unanimous verdict, let's go. I was like, okay.
Wow.
And I think they said it had actually arrived in 7 minutes. I think that was right, 7.
Wow.
On the Friday. So it was really, really quick. Particularly the Thursday was really quick, having not expected anything to come from that. And so 3 charges, 3 not guilties, all very speedy.
Yeah.
In the end.
And I think that's reassuring that you didn't just get the verdict, but it came back really quickly. And, the judges and people involved said, like, that's, they've never seen it concluded so quickly, that kind of a trial. And so it makes you feel like this is like a, it's really clear cut, isn't it? And
it's really clear.
Really reassuring. Yeah.
And you don't know when it's you. So we felt it was really clear. But I'm the most biased person in the room, so if I think it's clear, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is clear.
Yeah.
But it was really reassuring to hear it was to 12 other impartial people who just turned up that day to be on a jury, or that week.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's kind of, in one hand, that's kind of the end of, well, not totally, because I know there's still, you're still dealing with the aftermath of all that, turning upside down of your lives for 2 years.
Yeah.
But, like, what kind of, looking back now, a few weeks, out from it all, what would you say you've learned through the whole process? Is there anything that kind of jumps out?
I think there's quite a few things. I'm trying to think of one. I think I've definitely learned to praise God for who he is, no matter what the what is.
Yeah.
I've learned that sometimes you just have to tell yourself truths when you don't feel like any of them are true. You've got to just preach to yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
We've got a playlist now in our house that we played each morning bearing in mind you had to get up and go to school to the place where you would never want to darken ever again, every single day. And all of them are songs about how God is good. And we would play it each morning because, and still, we were playing it this morning, but we played it every single morning to just remind us as we started our day, who we're starting our day with, I think. And I think one big thing is you think something will never end, and it feels some days, on my worst days, I genuinely just wanted to drive my car into a tree, to be honest. But I think I've learned that when the day feels too much, to just say, God, please can you just help me get through this hour? Let's get to 2:00. Get us to 2:00. That's what we did. And you get to 2:00, and then you go for 3:00, and you go for 4:00, and just God's all the way through sustained us all the way through that. But it's easy for people to say that, isn't it? God will sustain you. But I think what I've learned is sometimes you have to just do it hour by hour, minute by minute, and just keep on going.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think, like, just kind of keep going and keep depending on, it's dependence on God, really, isn't it? Like, I don't think we realize how much we depend on God until chips are down, and then life's really hard, and then it's like we really need Him. So often we can be quite capable, can't we, and just get on with our own lives. And that, as you're talking, it just really struck me, like, it's just that dependency on God, moment by moment, day by day.
Yeah. And that it does bring you joy. That's what been the surprising thing that we have learnt. I think we were saying this morning in the car, even, there's a song, Christ is my firm foundation, and it says in it, He brings you peace that makes no sense. And we felt so much of that. Like, I'm telling you the worst moments, but I also want to tell you the good moments, because we have laughed so much in the last 2 years as well. We've had some seriously dark humour about the whole situation, but we have cried laughing. We have made the best of a really horrendous situation. And things like, we went on holiday to Wales, and Darren's not allowed to stay with us. So we, some friends gave us some money, and he stayed in a hotel down the road, and it was full of really, really, really old people. And now the kids still will say to him, well, you're old because you stay in the old granny hotel. Kind of, just really silly things. And people, I know that lots of people will say, well, we went to the Stamps house, and you would never know anything was going on because it feels really normal. And that is only Jesus, because I did not want to be happy about it. I was so miserable. But you experience joy in such dark times, and people around you bring joy too. But also we can find joy even in the roughest day. That's been one thing that I've learned that I've been really surprised at. I thought we would look back on 2 years and just think, wow, that was a miserable old 2-year ride. Actually, when I look back, it was mostly joyful, with a lot of darkness, but actually a lot of joy in there too. And that's only down to Jesus, because I had no capacity to do that myself at all, at any point.
That's amazing. And and as you say, that could only be Jesus, couldn't it? Like, that's not what you would expect to be saying about that season.
No.
I suppose now you're kind of settling back into like normal life as a family again. It must leave you feeling like, wow, you just don't take all those things that we all take for granted anymore. Like, I'm guessing it's like just all being together must be an amazing thing. Like after 2 years,
Yeah.
it's I still find it like amazing that, and I know you've said this, but that their process is so slow. And obviously,
It's
it's
so
important when
slow.
it comes to safeguarding that they're like thorough in
Yeah.
an investigation. You would hope that the legal system is like that,
Yeah.
and the justice system is like that. But at the same time, it's
It
such
is
a long time
so
to
slow.
wait, isn't it? It's so much
Yeah.
waiting, and
Yeah. And I think it probably is getting worse, I imagine. I think we actually did pretty well to be just under the 2-year mark. It's just everything is backlogged, slow, inefficient, all those things. And you forget that there's humans on the other side.
Yeah, it's not just a process.
Mm.
It's like people's lives as well, isn't it? And like you were saying to me, Esther, before we started the call, but that like, obviously like this happens to a lot of people, like allegations are made of varying degrees all the time. Did you say something like about 900 families a month are affected in this way?
I think
Something like
it
that?
was there's a foundation called the Lucy Faithful Foundation, and I think that's the stat off their website that there's 900. I mean, obviously it's not 900 people waiting 2 years for a trial, but if you are accused of anything similar, you are removed from the family home. And since this happened to us, a couple of people, kind of friends of friends and things, have come up and said, this did happen to us, once. I was like, what? All a lot shorter than us, but it happens to more people than we will ever know, I think.
Yeah. And I guess not all of them, as you say, they don't always go to trial. They don't always drag on for quite as long as your story did. So some of them probably just get dealt with a lot quicker.
And dropped, I'm sure they get dropped quite quickly. But I still think, even if it's been a couple of months and it gets dropped, these are your children who one day had their parent there and the next day didn't. And even if it's a few weeks, a few months, it will have lasting repercussions for a family for a long time.
Yeah. And you were saying that kind of one good thing that came out of all this is that a few other people who've been in a similar scenario have, because you've shared quite publicly about your experiences, and in doing so, like other people have kind of got in touch with you and connected and said, oh, we're going through something similar. And I think that's amazing how even so recently coming out the back of it, you're able to be so open about it and kind of just get alongside and give advice to other people.
Well, I think what I didn't expect is the feeling of shame. And obviously for me it was really public, wasn't it, because I'm going through a school playground. But I think these kind of things that happen to people, your automatic reaction is to hide and not tell anybody. I was forced to, because the whole of the part of the city that the school was in basically knew by the end of the week. I was forced to be out there when I would rather have not been. But I just kept thinking, well, if this is what I'm forced to do, then I might as well do something good with it and just be out there and say, this is us, this is what's happened, this is the repercussions, or these are the repercussions, many, many of them. And I'm here if you ever want to chat about it, if you ever end up in that scenario, because I understand the need to want to hide away and not tell anybody at all. And the feeling of shame is really strange, because you've not done anything, and as a spouse you've not done anything at all, but you do feel a really strange feeling of wanting to be anonymous and nobody ever wanting to know anything. And as we said at the start, my house is the type of house that people just walk on into. That wasn't what I was like and what we were like as a family ever before. I have so many people have got our spare key, it turns out, because people keep appearing in my house and leaving me food. I think so many people have got a spare key to my house. And that was really normal. And it's that opposite feeling. You want to lock yourself in. You want to hide and never leave your house ever again. I certainly did not want to take my kids to school. I didn't want to see another human. And if that's how I felt, it's very likely that's what other people feel.
Sure.
And I think if you can help one person that's like that's feeling like that, then great.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that you're kind of not just hiding away, but using your experience to kind of, advise, be a listening ear, give some practical advice maybe to others. And definitely if there's anyone who listens to this podcast and is in that space or knows someone who's in that space as well, then you'd be happy to connect, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Esther?
definitely.
Like, they can get in touch through the Crowd Church website, get in touch with our team, and we'll put you in direct contact.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like to do that.
Yeah, and there doesn't seem too much support for in normal life, non-Christian life, for people like us. I couldn't find anything for us that was specific to us, and the social worker couldn't find anything specific to the children. She said all the charities that I know deal with victims of crime, the direct victims of crime. And I remember saying, but we're a victim. If my children are victims of something, what about us? And there was nothing. And so, if I can help in a tiny, tiny way, then that's great.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's hard, isn't it? Because like, obviously, the legal system sort of says you're innocent until proven guilty. But actually, when it comes to safeguarding, you're sort of treated as guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
Which absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just incredibly difficult for everyone involved. Like, anyone can make an allegation about anyone at any time. And and that's the repercussions. So it's thank you so much for being here and for sharing, your story with us so bravely, because I think you're right. It's not an easy subject to talk about, and it is something that would often seem like we'll just hide away, or now that you're done, it would be so easy to just be like, oh, thank goodness that season's done, and never want to think about it again. Yeah. And I really respect the fact that you're like, no, I get there's something good that I can do through this awful experience that will help maybe a few other people. So I do really respect that you're doing that, Esther. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Sharing your story.
Thanks.
It's been really enlightening to talk to you and to hear about your experiences. And I just think you're an amazingly strong woman. And just thank you so much for sharing your story. And as I say, if there's anyone listening who wants to connect with Esther, then please do get in touch with us. But that brings us pretty much to the end of this episode. So Esther, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Anna.
No worries. And thanks for joining us as well, listeners. We'll see you again soon.
And just like that, we've reached the end of another fascinating conversation. Remember to check out Crowd Online Church at www.crowd.church. Don't forget to subscribe to What's the Story on your favorite podcast app. We've got a treasure trove of inspiring stories coming your way, and we'd hate for you to miss any of them. What's the Story is a production of Crowd Online Church. Our fantastic team, including Anna Kettle, Matt Edmondson, Tanya Hutzalak, and myself, Sadaf Bainan, work behind the scenes to bring these stories to life. Our theme song is a creative work of Josh Edmondson. If you're interested in the transcript or show notes, head over to our website, what'sthestorypodcast.com. And while you're there, sign up for our free newsletter to get all the goodness delivered straight to your inbox. That's all from us this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.